So welcome again, everyone. My name is Nicole Johnson. I'm the Director for Partners in Health and Wholeness. Our agenda for today, we're going to stay to our usual, 50 minutes to an hour. Usually we kind of hit 50 minutes and we do pretty well. I'm happy to have you join us today. On our call, there's me, Director for Partners in Health and Wholeness. We also have Stephanie Saunders, who is our Program and Engagement Administrator. And we have Jared White, who is with our partners who are helping us with this webinar today. He comes from the Rural Advancement Foundation International. And we also have with us Elizabeth Kiersey. Did I do it right, Elizabeth? And she is Pierce.
Pierce, yes,
okay,
almost.
I'm going to get it right. Elizabeth Pierce. And she is also going to be partnering with Jared to talk about successful farm and faith partnerships today. We're going to start with an opening prayer. And this one is, it comes from a book called Common Prayer, a liturgy for ordinary radicals. And it is a prayer for blessing of the land or a garden. And I thought it particularly fitting for today, since we're talking about farm and faith partnerships and what our faith communities can do in those kinds of partnerships and work. God of the universe, you made the heavens and the earth. So we do not call our home merely planet Earth. We call it your creation, a divine mystery, a gift from your most blessed hand. The world itself is your miracle. Bread and vegetables from earth are thus also from heaven. Help us to see in our daily bread your presence. Upon our gardens, upon our farms, may your stars rain down their blessed dust. May you send rain and sunshine upon our gardens and us. Grant us the humility to touch the humus, that we might become more human, that we might mend our rift from your creation, that we might then know the sacredness of the gift of life, that we might truly experience life from your hand. For you planted humanity in a garden and began our resurrection in a garden. Our blessed memory and hope lie in a garden. Thanks be to God, who made the world teeming with variety of things on the earth, above the earth, and under the earth. Thanks be to God for the many kinds of plants, trees, and fruits that we celebrate, for the centipedes, ants, and worms, for the mice, marmots, and bats, for the cucumbers, tomatoes, and peppers we rejoice, that we find ourselves eclipsed by the magnitude of generosity and mystery. Thanks be to God. Amen. And without further ado, I will have Jared and Elizabeth introduce themselves. Can we make Jared a co-host so he can share his screen too, Stephanie, if I haven't done that already? Take it away, Jared and Elizabeth.
Great, thank you. As Nicole mentioned, my name is Jared White, and I'm the Farm and Faith Partnerships Project Manager with the Come to the Table program at RAFI USA. So definitely thank you for joining us. We talk a little bit about forming and creating different kinds of local farm and faith partnerships. And I do want to give Elizabeth a chance to introduce herself as well.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Elizabeth Kierce. I am a parishioner at St. Francis of Assisi in Raleigh, and I run the Farm to Church CSA program in my community.
Cool, thank you. So first, I'll share a little bit about RAFI USA and the Come to the Table program. Next, we'll talk a little bit about the Farm and Faith Partnerships Project, what it is, how it works, how people can get involved. And then finally, we'll hear from Elizabeth, as well as our Come to the Table program director, Justine Post. And they'll be able to talk a little bit about Elizabeth's experience as a church CSA coordinator, what that looks like day to day, week to week. And then we'll go from there. So RAFI USA stands for the Rural Advancement Foundation International USA. So it's a little bit of a mouthful, which is why we call it RAFI USA for short. RAFI's been around for about 30 years, and we do a lot of work challenging the root causes of unjust food systems. So that looks like supporting and advocating for economically, racially, and ecologically just farm communities. And we address this through a few different ways. We address this through farm advocacy work, as well as on-the-ground technical assistance for farmers. We work to challenge corporations and challenge corporate power, as well as working at the federal level for policies that will help and support small and mid-sized farms, such as the Farm Bill coming up. We also do work expanding farmers market access throughout North Carolina, as well as supporting farmers of color through our Farmers of Color network. And Come to the Table in particular, we do work empowering faith communities to participate in the creation of a just food system through collaboration, capacity building, and advocacy. And we believe that within RAFI's work in supporting and working alongside small and mid-sized farms, we believe that faith communities have a really key role to play in this work. So Come to the Table's primary strategy is connection. We connect churches and faith communities with people, resources in the food system, as well as other RAFI USA programs. This could look a lot of different ways. We hold events, gatherings, workshops. We'll be looking forward to the 2024 conference, which is our biannual conference, which will be happening in October 2024. And the project that we would like to highlight during this workshop, of course, is our Farm and Faith Partnerships project. So in partnership with RAFI's Farmers of Color network, the Come to the Table program, we're really working to address both farmer land loss on the one hand, especially for farmers of color, and local food accessibility issues through the Farm and Faith Partnerships project. The goal of the Farm and Faith Partnerships project is to work against injustices in the food system that harm farmers of color in rural communities by creating mutually beneficial and self-sustaining economic partnerships between farmers of color on the one hand and faith groups in their communities on the other. Our goal for these relationships is that they result in farmers of color gaining additional sources of income and increased access to new local markets, and for community members to gain an increase in food access and access to fresh and healthy foods. So our goal is that through these partnerships, congregations are able to participate in the building of thriving local food systems and economies, while also engaging in relational ministries with farmers in their communities. And so in terms of current projects, Elizabeth and Justine will be able to share more about the Wake County pilot project, which was kind of our first in a little bit. But we also have relationships in Lee and Moore counties, Beaufort County, Granville County, as well as Greene and Pitt counties. So we've seen this model work in both rural contexts as well as urban contexts. We also have a CSA partnership in Durham County as well. So this is a model that we believe is replicable in several different kinds of contexts. In terms of how it works, first, we generally want to take a look at the context and the people on the ground. we definitely want to make sure that we're not replicating work that's already been done or that is already going on. And so if there are already existing partnerships in a context, then we definitely want to support those and work alongside those farmers in those churches. But if not, we do want to see what relationships exist on the ground and kind of work from those. And in terms of the second phase, we really like pairing a farmer and a church first. And so this might look like outreach on the farmer side if we already have a church that's interested, or outreach on the church side if we already have a farmer that's interested. Once we have a church and farmer pairing, we like to set up an introductory meeting with all of the different congregations in the area that might be interested, that might already have connections in a relationship. From there, we do follow-up and outreach. We have a commitment meeting where we kind of establish what the terms of the CSA are going to be, what the prices are going to be, time frame, what it looks like to be a shareholder in the CSA. And we definitely like to celebrate. As Elizabeth and Justine might go into later, we definitely encourage establishing CSAs to find a way to celebrate that partnership and continue to build relationship. And of course, we have ongoing maintenance. So whether that's communication through the season, delivery logistics, payment logistics, farm visits, whatever it is, every CSA is a little different. But definitely once it's up and going, we still have kind of ongoing maintenance and things to keep track of and take care of.
Just a quick question.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Are all of these partnerships CSAs? All of the partnerships, like the ones that you listed, between the churches and the farmers, are they all CSAs, or are there other kind of models?
The vast majority are CSAs. We do have, I believe, one partnership that's more of a bulk purchasing agreement model. So it's not necessarily multiple people from the community purchasing. It's more a church purchasing in bulk from a farmer and then distributing to either a food pantry, a food ministry, or connecting with other partners in the community that could use those shares. But yeah, that's a great question. Thank you.
And how would a church know if they have the capacity? Like I noticed in phase 2, it talked about the capacity. Like, what would that mean? What does that mean if a church is like, I don't know, do we have the capacity?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I don't know if we have a way of sending out maybe a PDF after this. We do have a worksheet that is called Churches Working with Farmers. And so if you work through the worksheet, it offers 8 to 10 questions or 8 to 10 prompts that help a church figure out whether or not ready to purchase from a farmer. So it helps a church work through what their current buying capacity is, the ways in which they're already purchasing food, how often they will need food, what their budget is, and making sure that by the time they address a farmer or approach a farmer, that they already have a lot of those internal logistics figured out. And that's something that, yeah, we would love to pass on. If that's possible.
Yes, we'll have a follow-up email that goes out to everybody who registered for the webinar. So,
oh, awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. Thank you. And so, yeah, I think at this point, I will pass it to Elizabeth and Justine. Elizabeth has already had a chance to introduce herself. Justine Post is the program director for the Come to the Table program. And they will be talking a little bit about the Wake County CSA and Elizabeth's experience.
Thanks, Jared. Maybe since, I mean, you've seen some of these lovely photos, but since Elizabeth and I are mostly going to be chatting, I'm wondering if you can stop sharing. That way we can see faces. Hey, everybody. Good to see everyone. I see a few familiar names and faces, so that's always nice. Elizabeth, you already introduced yourself. Sorry, I was a few minutes late. My name is Justine. I'm the program director for Come to the Table. And it's good to see you all here. So Elizabeth and I kind of put together some questions and to kind of help you understand directly what that experience has been like helping facilitate a CSA with a farmer. So Elizabeth, I know you introduced yourself, but maybe you could share why you were first interested in this project, in this ministry, and how you got involved.
Sure. So my personal food journey made me aware of where my food comes from and why that's important to know where your food comes from, not just for my own health, but for the health of the earth as well. And it was very important for me. It is very important for me to make sure that I'm eating, if not from a farm that grows sustainably or regenerative, is organic, and I'm buying local as much as possible, not just for the environment, but also because when we can purchase local, our food is more nutrient dense and it is better for us. Through that journey and through circles in my church, I was introduced to a gentleman by the name of Gary, and he kind of leads all of our weekly meetings at the Farm to Church program. And so I watched a couple of webinars or I guess informational meetings online about the program. And I thought that this would be a great way to share eating fresh, eating local, and supporting a farmer of color at the same time. So not only was my personal food journey and understanding the importance of eating local and eating organic, but also in the summer of 2020, I was on a webinar that was talking about the unjust practices in agriculture. So I never really understood the background in that space. And at the end of the webinar, they asked each of us to drop in chat or come up with a way that we could support a farmer of color. And so I said to myself, okay, I'm already a part of a CSA through a different organization, but we eat enough produce that I could also get an additional CSA and support a farmer of color. I had no idea that I would end up supporting a whole program that now supports, we have 61 shares, a farmer of color. So that's kind of how I got started, how I learned about it, and why it's important to me to share that with other people.
Thanks. And so how did you mentioned connecting with Gary, how did you connect with other faith communities in Raleigh, and how did you get connected with the farmer?
So through the initial meeting that Rafi had with some churches that were interested, I think there were maybe a handful of churches at the time, we learned about the program. We met online like this via Zoom with other church members who were interested in being a part of the CSA. Lots of questions and answers, lots of logistics to figure out. I believe at that time there were 3 farmers initially that were involved in the project, and it really was kind of a start from scratch project. I remember just showing people what a CSA box looked like. You know, what comes in your box? Like, how much is it? How much, will it feed? And so the way that it works is so a CSA, if nobody knows what that is community supported agriculture. So basically what you're doing, you're supporting a farmer from the beginning. You pay for your share up front, and then that supplies the farmer with funds to then grow crops and have that money in hand first. And you're a part of that. So if there's excess, you might get some extra produce in your box, but if there is a crop failure, then you also are a part of that crop failure, and you just might not have as much in your box. So is learning all of those things, educating the different churches on all of those things. We meet every Wednesday to talk about, what's coming up for that weekend for deliveries. It's a community, sharing with one another, engaging with one another, and really it's kind of best practices that we can share. But at the end of the day, as the program director, you basically run the show for your church. And so it's all volunteer. I'm pretty sure it's all volunteer for all churches who run their programs. And you work directly with your farmer on, what days and times delivery will be. And for me, on my end of things, it's just keeping up with logistics, emailing all of my shareholders every week, letting them know, hey, this might be in your CSA share this week. This is when you need to come to church to pick up your shares, and then be that lead person on delivery days to help make sure everything goes smoothly. Does that answer your question, Justine?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
So kind of piggybacking off of that, since the title of this webinar is Successful Farm and Faith Partnerships, tell us about why you think this has been successful in your church community or in your area, and what have been maybe the keys to success or opportunities that have moved it forward.
Sure. So just on a numbers standpoint, I can measure the success because we started the program. We joined in the summer of 2021. So my first season, we had 17 members sign up. By the fall of 2021, that next season, I had 51 people sign up, and then remained pretty steady. And this spring, I now have 61 people who have signed up. So to me, that's a little bit of success there, just by being able to increase membership, because while we are a very large church, I think we have now over 4,000 families. 61 people doesn't seem like a whole lot, but starting from 17, I feel really good about that. And I just hope that I can continue to grow it. Also, so at St. Francis, there is a group in our social justice ministries called Care for Creation. And that is the group that I'm a part of, that I was able to get the CSA program introduced to our church. So our mission is to advocate for the environment. So by being able for me to tie that mission back to the CSA program, and also just being Franciscan and lifting others up, and this program helping to bring justice to farm and food in the agriculture and lifting up farmers of color, I feel that helped it become successful, because I can relate it back to our purpose, ultimately being our care for creation and what Mother Earth provides us. It's important for us to take care of that. And then the other thing is just being able to, once you get people signed up, and then being able to educate them on the importance of local food, organic food, sustainable food. They get excited. I really love it when I see people come and pick up their produce and they're excited how pretty everything looks. People don't usually talk about food as being pretty. So, and everything is so green and so vibrant, and it just looks so wonderful. And so they get excited about it. They learn new ways to cook things that they might not have ever eaten before. And they share that with their friends. So that definitely helps make that successful as well.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that's actually a pretty key point that some people don't always pay attention to. We just last week we brought a ton of tote bags. You saw that last picture on that last slide, for CSA members to kind of carry their produce home. And one of our newer churches that's partnering with a newer farmer, after the congregants packed them all up, they called them bouquets, and then we got tons of pictures back and saying thank you. And it was just, it's such a important part because it really is, this fresh produce really is catching to the eye, and you can tell how much more vibrant even though you're still learning how to cook with it, or maybe you're not used to it, but there's just such a beauty to it as well, which I think is important. Well, it's also important to uplift challenges. So maybe if you could share a couple of the challenges or obstacles to getting members to sign up, or things that you've seen, other challenges that maybe you didn't anticipate in this work.
Yeah, it's funny because when we first started our deliveries, we were with a different farmer in the beginning, and our deliveries were on Tuesdays. And I was thinking to myself, man, that's going to be a hard thing to get people to do, to come out on a Tuesday morning and pick up a share. I was worried that people would not be interested because of the day, and that it would be hard to get volunteers. And it turns out it's actually harder to get volunteers on a Saturday delivery than it is a Tuesday delivery, which I thought that was very interesting, because now with the new farmer, we're on a Saturday delivery schedule. So yeah, you wouldn't think that that would be a challenge, but day of week is, there's different things to think about for Tuesdays. Some people, it's great who work from home, or pick up their produce after dropping their kids off at preschool, and Saturdays people get really busy with things. So that was something to figure out. Definitely trying to find someone to co-lead with me has been a challenge. I can get people to sign up to help out on a Saturday, but to actually get someone to help take on leading the Saturday is a little bit more intimidating, I think. So really trying to let people know what's involved, how easy it really is to do, and just being able to make that commitment for an hour is helpful, because we all have Saturdays things going on. The other thing that was a little bit difficult for me in the beginning, not so much getting support from the church, but getting, I guess you could say, buy-in in the respect that as long as I didn't ask for much and I ran it on my own, and I didn't require anything in addition from the church, it was fine. So I kind of got my corner. I did my thing. I didn't ask for anything, and I ran it how I wanted to. But really getting the buy-in from, upper levels of leadership became really important, because I realized that was the only way that I was really going to make this grow into something much larger than just 17 people. And so just continuing to advocate for the program and pushing for some space and some time during Mass to get it announced, that for me did make a big difference, because in this fall of this last fall of 2022, I had 36 people that signed up. And then while we were doing our sign up for the spring of 2023, I was able to get it announced during Mass and have a table at the end of Mass to encourage people to sign up and teach people about it. And that's when I jumped up to my 61 shares. So that was a challenge in the beginning, but now that I've gotten, I feel like, my foot in the door in that space, I can only continue to grow it from there. And then really education, because if I've learned anything, I've learned that you can't tell people how to eat or what to eat. Food is sacred. So I had to really rethink, just because I like doing this doesn't mean other people are going to like doing this. And even though I know it's really important, how can I gently educate others and encourage others to just kind of understand where their food comes from, to help them, see why it might be important to eat locally and support a farmer of color, and how you're caring for your environment at the same time.
Thanks. That's definitely resonates, being a parent of young kids and trying to feed them. You still can't control even that. Well, just a couple more questions. If you would, please share a story, maybe one moment from the last couple of CSA seasons that felt really meaningful to you. Maybe a time when you or someone else connected with the farmer or with another family or with the food.
So for me, and I think a lot of the leaders in the program who run the CSAs at their churches would say it's community. We have a community that, we meet every Wednesday to talk about the good and the bad and what's working, what's not working, supporting one another, lifting one another up in that. But then also just at my church, I text the woman this morning to let her know she came across my thought when I was reading this question. And, people that I probably normally would not be in relationship with at my church just because of different ages, different backgrounds, having 3 kids, you find yourself more in that pod of, families, whereas maybe not in different pods. So it's really allowed me to connect with different people and really have relationships with them, which has been really nice. When we do our deliveries on Saturday mornings, and I have that group of volunteers out with me, there's a lot of laughing, there's a lot of talking, new friends, old friends. And so it's just really nice to share that with one another and to just see people enjoying it. If people are smiling as they're handing their the produce out to people to put in their bags. And that's I really enjoy that part.
Thanks. Last question, and then I would love to hear from everyone else here. What advice would you give to other churches who want to incorporate something similar into their ministries? You've kind of touched on a few of these, but maybe one last word of encouragement or advice.
Just go for it. It's not that hard. It might seem intimidating, but it really isn't. You have a community that will support you and walk you through it. And there's a program in place already on how to do it. So you're not starting from the beginning. You're stepping into it with the knowledge from other people that can help you. And it doesn't matter if your church only has 7 shares or if your church has more than 61. You're making an impact in every share that you sell and every person that becomes a part of it. So just do it. Go for it. And ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Well, those are all the questions I have. But I see one in the comments that I can read out loud, and then please continue either putting them in the chat or unmute. Did you mean local CSA group leaders from various churches meet on Wednesdays or just your church leaders?
So the CSA leaders from each of the churches that are participating. So I think Jared said we have 9 churches and 9 farmers in the Wake County CSA. So we are the ones that meet on Wednesdays for 30 minutes. So most churches only have 1 leader, or they have maybe a co-lead, and then you have the farmers. So there can so does that answer the question? I hope.
Carl, I see you raised a hand.
I just wanted to add something that is a little different at our church from what Elizabeth described. We are a smaller church. We have probably about 15 or 16 families that are core members of our CSA, and we have been with the CSA since the very beginning. It is sponsored both by our Creation Care group as well as our outreach group. But we have a lady in our church who was a retired nurse, and her passion over the last, as long as I can remember, probably 30, 40 years, has been to care for people, low-income people and immigrants now, and she kind of takes them under their wing. So one of the things that we are doing at our church is our outreach committee sponsors 2 half shares for her to give to these low-income families. And we have, generally each season, we have 2 or 3 of our members who also will donate a couple of shares. So that way we are reaching out into the community and we are addressing our concerns about eco-justice that Jared talked about, that we are supporting our farmers of color locally. And I think as much as our people are excited about getting nutritious local grown food, what really draws them and keeps them in the program is what they are doing to live out their faith. And I think that's a very important aspect of this whole program and really needs to be emphasized.
Thank you for sharing that, Carl. That brings up a good point that I forgot to mention. We have a community garden at St. Francis, and the garden at St. Francis donates the food to the Interfaith Food Shuttle. And so what they have done for me and the CSA is that anyone who wants to donate their share, or say they can't pick up their share that weekend, we donate it all to the community garden, and then they get all of that down to the Interfaith Food Shuttle. And we also have a few members who strictly buy a share just to donate the food. So thank you. I forgot that.
Somebody else has their hand raised on an iPhone.
This is Paula. I have a question.
Hi, Paula.
I live in Brunswick County,
Mhm.
and then we contacted the Brunswick Agricultural Office, and there are very few farmers that grow produce in our area, and no farmers of color. So I just wondered how this works logistically. How can you guys help us identify a farmer of color, and how far would they travel to deliver produce to us? Just as far as logistics, how could we get involved?
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly help you find farmers. They might not be running a specific, CSA. They might not be aggregating produce like that, but we could certainly help and work on developing relationships. That's the thing about Raffi. We have, we're connected with the Farmers of Color program. We're the same team, and we can certainly work together to help identify some farmers. And it depends on who you ask. It might not be the case that, there might actually be farmers of color in Brunswick County. Sometimes because of the history of the relationships between farmers of color and governmental agencies over the years, there might not be the best trust or reliability or even just relationship at all. So you never know who might also be out there that just isn't as well known as others. So we'd be happy to work with you.
So I could just contact you direct, Justine?
Sure.
Mhm.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Or Jared as well, or both of us, really, ideally.
And I wondered how that hooks in with Men and Women United. Is it separate, or could that, I could just talk to you offline, I guess, about how all that works.
Yes, definitely. And Men and Women United are an organization run and managed and owned by people of color, and they help aggregate produce from different farmers around the area. And so, yes, that they can certainly be part of the conversation, Paula.
Okay, thanks so much.
Do we have any other questions for Justine or Elizabeth or Jared? Something that I did want to pick up on that Elizabeth was mentioning was getting the buy-in, and I know we did have a couple clergy, couple pastors logged on at the start. Do you think that this is being talked about in the context of faith at your church, Elizabeth? Like, are there other places where they talk about this connection between like food and health and faith, or creation care and health and faith? How is that working out? Like, are there short-term studies that help people to make those theological connections, or is it more education based to tell people about it?
For what I know right now, I think it's definitely more education based. Through the Care for Creation team at my church, that and the social justice ministries team at the church, I think is definitely where it falls into. And we do discuss in those circles how we really need more to come from the top. But also, like I said, food is sacred. And I feel sometimes that there just might not be knowledge on how our food and how we eat is actually caring for creation and important in our faith. We did have a pilot program that we did at our church a few years back with our social justice ministries leader at the time. And it was a beautiful program about, where your food comes from and how we eat and how that supports social justice or doesn't, and how that supports the earth or doesn't. And it was in fellowship, and we met, I think, over the course of 8 weeks, and we shared a meal together. We talked about where that meal came from, and then different things happening in really big food, like industrial farming and industrial livestock and things of that nature. And so I felt like that was a really good start, but then nothing really came of it from there. And from my understanding, that program is no longer in existence, unfortunately. So I really think that it is important in some way to get more buy-in from your clergy or your pastors. And just, I don't think it's because they don't want to. I think there's just maybe knowledge that needs to be shared there. So I definitely think education is key.
Yeah. Thank you, Elizabeth. Carl, you're muted.
Carl, we can't hear you.
I just wanted to add to that a resource that might be useful to other faith communities. Our church is an Episcopal church, and our presiding bishop, Bishop Curry, has been very actively promoting the concept of beloved community, and that is going out and taking care of your neighbor. And a couple of years ago, the Episcopal Church provided a curriculum for our individual churches to use, which is called Sacred Ground. And that was about a half a year curriculum. And I think at Nativity, we had about 40 people. We had 2 different classes, one during the day for people who were retired and could do it, and one in the evenings for those who were working. And we learned about basically what Jared was talking about at the beginning, the injustice that our farmers of color have experienced over the last century or so, or even beyond that, since the Civil War. And following that curriculum, then we spent about 6 months as members that took that, talking about, well, what can we do in our local community in order to try to address this injustice that has occurred while we are addressing the important problem of food insecurity. And it just, everything just sort of fit together. Elizabeth mentioned the Interfaith Food Shuttle. Jill Bullard, who was a co-founder of the Interfaith Food Shuttle, is a member of our church. And of course, so since our earliest days, we have had an awareness of food insecurity in our community and what we can do about it. It was through this Sacred Ground program that we learned about the injustice that had occurred for farmers of color. And so that was, when we heard that Jared and others were interested in this kind of a program in our community, well, we jumped all over it because it just seemed to fit and be exactly what we were looking for. It provided us these solutions. Now, I don't think that you have to be an Episcopalian in order to follow this curriculum. It is something you might be able to bring into your formation within your faith communities, whatever denomination, and it's just not for Episcopalians, it's for everybody. And it's for all of us to understand what is going on and has gone on and what we can do about it. And so if you're interested, I can, through the North Carolina Council of Churches or in other ways, I can maybe help you get connected with it.
Sure, Carl. It'd be great if you would like to share a link to that resource if it's downloadable. And also Partners in Health and Wholeness a few years ago now created a curriculum called Eating Well for Ourselves, Our Neighbors, Our Planet. And it's kind of a multi-generational small group study that could be helpful for some folks. And we'll include that in the follow-up email as well. Do we have any other questions for Justine or Elizabeth or Jared? So Justine and Jared, their email is in the chat, but we'll send a follow-up email if any of your faith communities would like to maybe explore. Maybe you're like not sure if you would be able to come up with kind of that kind of CSA Farm and Faith project, but you could definitely explore with them and they would definitely help. Yes, they would definitely help walk you through what could be possible. And so that would be, I think that would be a great way potentially to follow up with this. So in the follow-up email, we'll have all the information and we're recording. So I should be able to get your emails if you did not register, but you logged on. So that's great. Thank you, Elizabeth. And thank you, Jared and Justine. It's always a pleasure to have y'all.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
So I'm going to switch over just a second and share a screen here. Partners in Health and Wholeness does have a few other events upcoming. And I wanted to highlight those because this is just one of the 4-part food and faith series that we're doing for our faith communities. And so the next 2 in this 4-part series, we already had one. It was community gardening. It's all in the details. Today was successful farm and faith partnerships. And our next upcoming webinar in this food and faith series is connecting faith and health to nourish lives and empower communities. And I think Kim Eshelman is on our call and she'll be featured on that call talking about faith and health and how we can nourish lives and empower communities. So I'm going to leave all the words to her that she's going to be sharing. And then the last one in this 4-part series is Healthy Swaps. We're going to have Jordan Jeffries James, and he's going to be talking about like really practically, what could it look like to eat together as people of faith? We eat together a lot. And what kind of healthy swaps can you make? And what could that look like around the table? So those 2 upcoming events, if you have not seen them yet, you can still register. They are open for registering or if you want to share them with others. And then the North Carolina Council of Churches, it is time in 2023 for our legislative seminar. And it is a seminar all day, May 16th, 10 to 2:30. We'll have a variety of workshops for people of faith to look at different legislative issues for the 2023 legislative session, but through a lens of faith in particular. Like, what do different bills say? How would that affect our communities? And how can we think about those things within the context of our theological values? So those 3 events, the next Sacred Conversations, Connecting Faith and Health to Nourish Lives and Empower Communities, that's May 11th. And then the Faith and Health Connection, Healthy Swaps, May 18th. And then the legislative seminar on May 16th. So please sign up for those. You can find the information on our website. We send them out in our newsletter and in our emails if you would like to find out more about those. So that brings us to the end. It always surprises me that we go like right up to 11:50. So, but anyways, thank you all for being present today. And in our Partners in Health and Wholeness tradition, we're going to do what we call 3 deep breaths. We're going to take a moment and we're going to take 3 deep breaths, and I'll count off the first one. I encourage you to kind of ground yourself in the space where you are, feet on the floor, or maybe you're in a different position that's more comfortable for you. Loosen your arms, feel your body settle into the space. If you're sitting on a chair, feel the chair where you are. If you're outside, feel potentially warmth, or feel the wind, or the sounds that you can hear. Settle into the space where you are. And I'm going to count off the first deep breath. And then I'm going to encourage you to take 2 more, and then I'll say amen. 1. Amen.